What if your greatest heartbreak held the seed of your greatest purpose? Today at Conversations with Neighbors, we have a great story. I'm talking with Leanne Sexton, the founder of The Giving Place, a peaceful sanctuary in Mount Albert that began not with a business plan, but with heartbreak, healing, and a vision board that came true. Leanne was a single mother, pregnant, newly divorced, and on bed rest, stripped of stability and forced into stillness. And in that quiet, she asked herself what she really wanted out of life. This episode is about intention, community, lavender, rescued animals, and how the universe often responds when we finally listen to our own hearts. Let's get into it.
That's pretty awesome.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we'll start off like light. You just left The Giving Place to come to the office, the first time at the office.
Yes.
One, how was The Giving Place when you left it today?
It was warm.
Yeah.
And beautiful.
And
sorry.
No. I was going to say, and how do you like the Neighbor Media office?
Oh my gosh, I love it. I like honeycomb right behind me, or right behind you, Max. But
yeah, you got one too.
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's warm. It's inviting. It's modern, but it's still like comfortable and connective. So,
yeah. We tried to curate that vibe, that neighborly, homey vibe when people come in, and we feel like lots of people feel that when they come in, and I think you're about the vibes too, so you picked up on it.
Vibes, the vibes for sure.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning of the story. Maybe when everything seemed that it was falling apart. Bring me back to that time in your life and what was going on there.
I guess I was stretched too thin in the sense of working and trying to juggle my life, trying to be a mom at the same time, trying to keep up with my job, having financial issues, challenges, definitely being on bed rest with my fourth child, and trying to please everybody and just trying to do what I thought I needed to do to survive. And I guess because I was forced to stay still and my mind didn't have time to, I didn't have so many things. I was so used to go, go, go all the time. The rat race, staying up till midnight, doing emails, having to prepare for meetings the next day, trying to get my kids where they had to go. And then suddenly everything stopped, is when I suddenly was forced to think about what my purpose was, and realizing how my whole life seemed to be based on trying to please everybody else. And all of a sudden I realized that I was living for everybody else instead of myself, and that whenever I did something for me that was true from my heart and became very heart-centered, it was as if this crazy manifestation, vortex, divine intervention, I don't know, God, whatever you want to call it, everything. It was like the red car syndrome, where you think of a red car and suddenly you see them. They were always there, but you didn't notice them until you focused on it. And it was the moment that I started to live a heart-centered life, that everything that I needed started to show up, as it probably always did before, but this now it was with more intention, with clarity, with greatness. Yeah,
I think it's a more common thread than you really think of we're constant in the pursuit of whatever it is, the external world, right? I do this so I could get this response back. I know I had fallen into that, especially from 20 to 30, achievement, on to the next thing. There was no stillness, right? And especially if you have ambition and you're always forward thinking, future thinking. Like you're never in the present moment. You're only thinking or planning about the future, or like regretting or dwelling about the past, like this back and forth piece of it, not like in the present pocket of that. And I think it's inevitable if you do that long enough, like your nervous system just cracks out and you just like are so burnt out and fatigued and like hit a breaking point. And it sounds like you've hit that point.
It's it always surprises me on how many individuals focus so much on the devastation or the stress or what's going to go wrong and spiral at focusing on everything that can go wrong. And unfortunately, I can't survive in, or fortunately, or unfortunately, however you want to put it, I can't survive in that space. I've always been the person with, no matter what is going on, I can always find the good, no matter what the situation is. And I can't iterate that to my children, to friends, to family, to people who always ask, how have you got where you are? And it's always been because I can always see something good. And I think it's so important in life to find that gratitude, no matter how small it is.
Yeah, like default setting optimist is a good default setting to have. Absolutely too. And then as well paired on to gratitude. Like in the chapter that you're like now, like the individual you are today, like you're clearly very mindful, right? But did you always have that practice in your life of like mindfulness and this awareness of this? Or was it, we got horse blinders on and we're just pursuing?
That's a great question. I didn't always have it. I was always hopeful, but it wasn't until I was probably about 17 or 18, maybe 19, that I had been such a victim in my life instead of realizing how much power I actually had. It was always somebody else's fault why I couldn't accomplish something or do something or didn't get this or life was tough or whatever. And it was actually Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield came out with a book called Dare to Win. And also my dad was a huge motivational speaker.
Self-improvement.
Yes, like into the Brian Tracy and all that. And I think it was at that age when I read that book that I suddenly realized I had more power than I had known before that. And I started focusing and studying. Obviously you didn't have like the internet and stuff like you do now, but I just started going to every motivational speaker, reading as many books as I could about people that I thought were great or that I wanted to live like.
Yeah. It's a scary thing because what you're talking about is taking true responsibility and ownership for like your being. Where before it's like you could point like this is why until you actually have to take full ownership, right? And actually be the master of your own universe, which it can be a scary leap.
Yes. Because if you don't do it right, it's very easy to fall back into patterns of negativity or creating more, because there's always going to be problems. There's always going to be challenges. Life is hard, and it's always looking for those good moments and appreciating the ones that you have, and then surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals. Yeah.
So then it's like when you're on that path, and then like anything, it's putting the reps in and developing that muscle. And over time, you just get better and better at it. So like in the stillness is where you kind of become more aligned with, call it your true calling, God, universe, listening to your heart. Like, what was that? And what was like step one of like actually listening to your heart, essentially?
Action was, I made a plan. I said, okay, no matter what happens this year, there was 3 things that I really wanted to accomplish and 3 things that I wanted to focus on. So I hired a coach, a life coach. And I told her I want to start a charity because I had always been doing charitable things, but I couldn't really commit to them because obviously I was in a bed. And second is they would always demand certain amounts of time. And here I was obviously with 3 kids, and I was thinking, how can I give that time? So I got this idea of helping others. Everybody wants to help, and everybody wants to do something, and everybody wants to feel valued, and everybody wants to know that whatever they do is going to make a difference. And I got this idea that I thought, what if everybody I just put it out to my friends and said, okay, if I find a family that needs help, what if we all just contribute a little bit? And so that was my first step, was thinking about how I could help others, but doing it on my terms. And then the other was to write this book. And it was a book that I just got this idea one night and wanted to be able to, because I was going through so many challenges, I wanted to be able to give advice to my children when they needed advice. And that's how the Book of Knowings came. And then the third was, I guess, just to live heart-centered and to surround myself with good people.
Okay, so let's break those down. Let's start with kind of the charitable part of it, right? So you have the idea of it, starting with let's find families in need, and then let's give a helping hand to them, pretty much, right? Like, what's step one of doing that piece of it? Is it reaching out to charities that are local, that are already serving that, saying this is my idea? Is it just posting on your social media, like, this is what I'm looking for? Like, what is the beginning step of the action?
Well, this is where I tell you how it became like this incredible vortex or divine intervention, because the moment that I found these ideas or these things that were pulling my heart, and doing it for all the right reasons, not caring what anybody else thought. Because I can tell you, I had a lot of people around me telling me not to be doing any of these things because they all said, Leanne, you've got enough on your plate, or life's already hard, or what are you thinking? Like, oh my gosh, like, what are you taking on now? And it was like, all of a sudden, I don't know why, but the blue door popped into my head because I had done some things for them with donating. And I just thought, I'm going to just call them. I'm going to call them and ask what they need. And I set up a meeting, and I went to visit them. And I said, look, I'm starting this charity, and I would love to interview you and tell me what it is you guys need. What is it that people don't give you that they need? And they said, wow, well, one thing, we have lots of food. We can get them a home. We can give them first and last month's rent. But after that, they're on their own. And there's this huge gap from being given money for first and last month's rent, and they can go to a food pantry or a food bank, but only once a month. So they have nothing from toothpaste to toothbrushes to furniture to beds to toaster oven to knives and forks to toilet paper to a couch. Like, they really are literally have nothing and no money to help them with that. So I was like, okay, well, I can help with that. So I said, could you give me a list of some of the families that need help? And the amazing, I know you can't do this now, but at the time that I started that, everybody was already pre-qualified because I knew they were real people in need. And it was during the beginning of before COVID. And I was given a list, I think, of 5 to 7 families the first month. And I was given the ages of the children. I was given permission by each one of the families that I could contact them, and found out the dates that they were moving out. And then I put it out there. And I just said to all of my friends, this was before it was really popular on Facebook. And I just said, hey, is there anybody, there's a family of 4, 2 children, one's a girl, one's a boy. These are the ages. Does anybody have any beds? Does anybody have any dishes? And suddenly it was as if like the water flowed, the tap went on within the month, we were able to help all of those families fully furnish their homes. We were able to, and then the word just started to spread. And that was in Aurora, Newmarket, East Gwillimbury, Bradford, Richmond Hill. And it just started, all the right people just started showing up.
And like all good things, right? You just start with that one thing. But now, like, how many families have you helped in this time now?
Well, during to today.
Yeah. Obviously, it has grown and evolved in other ways. It just like that's how it started. But
yes.
Of course, things evolve. But like,
I don't know, to be honest, the exact number, but because we had to stop doing that once I got the farm. But then we opened up to be able to continue that. We opened up the Giving Garden Haven and partnered with different food banks and different food pantries. So we support 5 of them. And on a weekly basis, it's completely run by volunteers. Everything we grow, 100% of it is given back to those food pantries. And it's pretty awesome to walk through the garden and know that just that little bit is making a difference with fresh food rather than a food bank.
Yeah, love that. And okay, so we got check 1 on that. But then the other thing on the list, small task, write a book. So like, okay, we start with an idea and then obviously next step is a little bit of action. How does the book come together? Who do you meet? Like, how does that go from idea to reality?
So I had heard about a lady by the name of Peggy McCall that lived in Ottawa, who is a New York Times bestselling author. And I guess I'm go big or go home. But I thought, okay, I heard she had this course at the time called Mastermind. It was like a mastermind group, and she would coach. Now I didn't have a lot of money at the time at all, but you know how like just everything just shows up. Somehow I had just enough money to join this coaching group with support from others that were also writing books. And so I started on these mastermind calls on a monthly or weekly basis while I was writing my book. But I didn't have a cover. I didn't have an editor. I didn't even have my story. And I didn't know how to go from the beginning to the end of actually having a book. And it was weird. I went to this first thing is I went to see Lisa Nichols, who was a motivational speaker and also an author. And I was sitting beside this man, and I found out he was one of the authors from Chicken Soup for the Soul. Mm-hmm. And I happened to start talking to him, and he said he would write. He was so impressed by the thought of the book that he said, I'll write the foreword. So now I was like, oh my gosh, this is really awesome. Then I was pulling, as I was pregnant, and I was pulling a blue box outside in the snow for the garbage day. The next day, this woman was walking by with a dog, and she said, can I help you? And I was like, no, I'm totally okay. And she's like, no, let me help you. And we just started talking. She was a new neighbor. I was kind of new to this new home. And I said, we should get together for coffee or tea sometime. And I said, what do you do? And she said, oh, I'm a book designer. I do book covers. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm writing a book. I need a book cover. And she said, well, I'd love to help you. And then I went to Ottawa. And now at this point, my son had been born. And I was sitting beside this woman, and she's had this energy that I liked about her. And I thought, I just liked something about her. And we started talking, and she asked what I did. And I said, I'm just doing this charity thing. And she said, oh, what's the charity? And I said, oh, it's called Touch a Heart. And she said, oh, I know Touch a Heart. And I'm thinking, no, she doesn't. She's mistaken, but that's nice. She thinks that or whatever. And I said, oh, okay, thanks. And I said, what do you do? And she said, oh, I'm a book publisher. And I was like, what? You're a book publisher? And she said, yes. And she said, as a matter of fact, because of what you're doing with Touch a Heart, I want to publish your book. And I was like, it was like the light coming again out of the sky. It was just more confirmation that I was going in the right direction. And I was like, how do you know who I am or what Touch a Heart is? And she said, well, I live in Mount Albert. I'm like, what do you mean you live in Mount Albert? We're in Ottawa. I live in Mount Albert. She goes, I know. And she had been watching my posts on Facebook and in Aurora and Newmarket. And that's how it just evolved. And then the three of us, Anne, who was the graphic, who did the book covers, and Judy, who owns Hasmark Publishing, we all got together and we decided, and we were all going through like this time in our lives where unity and being around the right people were needed. And we decided that on a regular basis, we would get together and we would talk about only things that we wanted to accomplish or achieve. And we'd help each other do that. We would never say, oh, you can't do that, or that's too big, or that's ridiculous. We would talk to each other and we'd say, this is what I want to do. And how can I help you? And even if it was like the littlest thing, if it was making a phone call or a contact or whatever. And that's how that started. And then we created a vision board. We each did a vision board. And within 2 weeks of doing that vision board, that's when I believe we had hit over 1,000 families that we had helped. My book became an international bestseller, and the farm came up for sale. And I knew I couldn't afford a farm. I hadn't even though it was on my vision board, I was thinking 5 years down the road. I wasn't thinking it's going to happen now. I just wanted to know what I could work towards, because I didn't want to live in a semi-detached house, and I didn't know how I was going to afford going from I had always had a single dwelling, but I just didn't know. It just seemed so out of reach anytime soon. And I saw this property, and it just happened to pop up on Facebook. Didn't even know about the property, just saw it pop up and it looked kind of interesting. And I called my friend who is a real estate agent, and I said, there's a property. Can I go look at it? And she kind of laughed, and she said, Leanne, why would you want to go look at it? Like, you can't afford that. And I said, I know I can't, but I want to know what it would feel like if I could. I just want to go and see something that attracts me, that I think would be my future vision. And she said, well, that's really nice, but first of all, that property is already supposed to be closing, has an offer on next week, and the property's out of your price range. And I can't, the person who owned the properties passed away, and there's an executor, and I can't really call them and say, well, my friend really wants to go and look at your property. She can't afford it. Well, I know you've already kind of sold it. But anyways, I said, okay, I totally get it. But if something like that comes up, can you call me? And she said, okay, I will. So I didn't think any more about that. But a month later, I was at a cottage with my kids, and I had all these texts from my friend saying, call me, call me, call me. And there was no signal. And I had to drive into a town to get a signal to find out what was going on, not even thinking about that property. I just thought there was something else wrong. And she said, do you remember that property? And I said, yes. She said, well, that offer fell through. There's another offer on it. It's supposed to close next week too, but I talked to the lady, the executor, and I told her your story. And she said that you're welcome to go for a walk on it tomorrow, which would be the Sunday. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, I'm like 5 hours away. And she said, well, do you want the opportunity or not? And she said, because I could tell her. But you know how like sometimes just something pulls you. And there was this pull that told me I needed to go. And it wasn't really, it wasn't for any kind of thought of anything other than I felt I needed to go. And I got in the car and I drove, and I brought my little baby at the time. He was like in a sling. And I started walking around this pond, and the property, it really was a blank canvas of forest and a cottage that needed a lot of work, and just grass and weeds. But when I stood there, it was sunny and it was warm and it was beautiful. And I just felt such a beautiful energy, such a peace. And I said to myself, yes, like this is the kind of place I would like one day. I would love a place like this. And I started to leave. And when I was leaving, there was a woman who was standing up by the cottage, and I realized that was the executor. And I said, thank you. Like, thank you for letting me walk here. I really appreciate it. I know you didn't need to, especially on a Sunday. And I know you know my story, but just thank you for giving me the time. And I left. And an hour later, I got a call from my agent, and she said, I don't know what you said to her, but she wants to know what you can afford. And I said, what do you mean what I can afford? I can't afford that. And she goes, I know, but she wants to know what you can afford. So I was like, well, what do I do? So she goes, well, we got to call a broker. And we called a broker, and who was another friend. And she told me what I could afford. And again, not thinking anything, like just thinking this was almost like a waste of time. But it was a beautiful question. So I thought, well, maybe I should know what I could afford for the future. And so anyways, an hour later, I got another call, and they said, the property is yours. And I said, what do you mean the property's mine? And I still, like, every time I tell this story, I still get goosebumps. She said that it was the first time somebody came on the property and loved it just for what it was. And her best friend had passed away from cancer, and she promised her friend that before she sold the place, that she would only sell it to somebody who would make it beautiful again. And that's why it's called The Giving Place, because it has given me and my family so much joy. And it's been built on beautiful people that have come together, just volunteers and friends and family, and just all the right people showing up to make this beautiful space. And I really, as much as everybody around me says, wow, what you've accomplished is really awesome, I'm really just the vessel, the vehicle of really divine intervention, because everything that is there has been miraculous or beautiful.
It's incredible. Like, what's the timeline between like those ideas, like even from the charity part of it to getting the property?
So 2014 is when I started the charity, and well, I guess close to 2014. No, it was 2014. And the book and everything was published in 2000, and I might be mixing up dates a little bit. It was about a 2-year period from the very beginning to the vision board. And 2 weeks after I did that vision board is when everything just started going crazy.
Have you read the book, The Alchemist?
I think I have. It sounds familiar, but I can't remember it at the moment.
It's like this story, but the core of it, right? The underlying thing is like when you are on your correct path, the universe conspires to like give you everything that you need. Essentially, the people show up, the things fall into place too. And it's like, I don't know if I've ever heard a more true story that it's just like once you were on that path of it, the people, the places, like all the things. And like you said at the end of it, like it's not necessarily you are the vessel of like this thing happening through you too, right? Like, you know, wherever these thoughts and ideas come from, but then you lead with action onto it, and then all the support and help that comes from it too. It's like the universe conspires to give you exactly what you need when you need it, when you're on the right path.
110%. And it still happens now. Like every day I see hearts in everything, whether it's a piece of bubble gum that is somebody's thrown on the ground, or a rock, and I just believe it's like confirmation that I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing. So as long as I keep getting
stay on the path,
signals,
just stay on the path, and the universe will continue to support. So like the land is wild and free. Like when you get it, like what's the process of turning it from that, obviously keeping the essence of the property, but then turning it into truly like the giving place with, the lavender, the animals, like all the other elements to it. Like what's that journey kind of like?
Crazy.
Yeah.
And I will be very honest that when I moved there, I had quite a few friends and family that thought I was nuts. They all were like, Leanne, how are you going to do this with your kids and still work your corporate job and still, like, what are you going to do? The place needed so much work. And it was a blank canvas of greenery. There was no fencing. There was no infrastructure. There was a stagnant pond. But there was this energy. There was this incredible, beautiful energy. And I was able to buy a little tractor, and I was very determined that I wanted to create a path from the house to all the way along the land. And the farm is 8.5 acres. But it also backs on the 9th line. So and then there's farm fields all behind us. So there's a lot of land. It's all road front. And I just started having bonfires with the kids. Like it was a lot of fun. We were just like, I would work. It's such a different kind of work when you're working like your daytime job and then you get home and there's like logs and bugs and trees and fire and marshmallow. Like you can just create. I would go to bed absolutely exhausted and dirty. But it felt alive. I felt alive and my kids were alive. And we just started creating natural pathways through the forest. And then we got to the field and then I was able to not plow it, but mow it. And the tractor would get stuck regularly. And I'd call the kids. I'd be like, you got to give me a little push or whatever. And then I started thinking, what can I do on this land? Because I couldn't do touch a heart anymore. And I was trying to figure out what can I do. And I started studying what kind of businesses or farms or crops you can plant that can be relatively lucrative and low maintenance. And one of them that popped up was lavender. And I loved lavender. Who doesn't love lavender? I was like, oh, lavender. But I really didn't have a green thumb. I didn't know a lot about lavender. So again, started studying other lavender farms. And there was this one lavender farm, and I loved how he responded to negative reviews. I know that's kind of crazy, but that's how I picked him. He was so eloquent and kind, no matter how the review was. And so I called him and I asked if I could hire him to teach me about lavender, and he did. He was amazing. He helped me a lot. But I also found out that lavender is a lot of work. It is not an easy crop, and it all has to be done by hand. But having said that, I put it out to the universe and I said, is there anybody who wants to help plant some lavender? Is there anybody who wants to help cut lavender? Come and have some lemonade or whatever. And people in my community just started showing up, or friends, because it was a beautiful night. It was, the lavender smells good. And that's how the lavender started. And then I was terrified of bees, because I had a bee allergy. And I carried an EpiPen and everything, but there was bees everywhere. And I thought, I got to conquer this fear. And I realized that I was very ignorant that bees were very different from wasps. And I had just always grown up where wasps were
They
nasty.
sting you.
Yes, and aggressive. And I found out bees aren't anything like that.
No.
So I hired this lady who was also allergic to bees, and her husband was one of the bee inspectors of Ontario. And I thought, if she can do it, I can do it. So again, it was divine, like just the right thing. Then somebody called me and said, I have a rabbit. I heard you got some property. Can you take this rabbit? And then we took the rabbit, and then it turned into potbelly pigs and goats and mini goats and lambs and dogs and cats. And before you know it, we have this animal rescue. And at the same time, when I was able to start creating the fields, that's when I knew more than anything. So in 2019, maybe it could have been 18, but definitely 2019 is when we started the Giving Garden, because I wanted to continue to give back, because I knew how hard it was when you're going through a difficult time to ask for help. And it's also difficult to get fresh food. And I just thought I want to make sure. I just remember there was a point where I couldn't go for help. I couldn't get help because I was in the middle of a divorce and I was afraid of losing my kids, because if I had to go to a shelter or if I had to do any of that, I wouldn't be the best parent to be looking after my kids. Mm-hmm. So I had to get through what I went through previously. But the reason I'm just mentioning that, I've never forgot how desperate I was of not being able to show or be vulnerable or transparent with the people around me, or of being judged. And so I will always create a space where I can give back, because I think more people want to help, but they want to know it's actually going to help somebody. Yeah,
definitely. And like, everyone that visits the Giving Place, they say it feels different here. Like, what is it that you think they're feeling?
So even though we do grow lavender, it really isn't about lavender. Lavender, again, is just one thing. I've created, so before anything, it's the energy. You can feel, like, whether you believe or you don't believe, there is just something that everybody says to me, no matter, even in the winter when there's nothing growing. There's something about that land that just feels good. You feel calm, or you feel peace. I don't know if it's just the longitude and the latitude or what it is, but it really does feel good. And then because it was such a rat race that I was living in the corporate world, and I finally left the corporate world last year. So this is my first year where I get to be at the Giving Place full time and continue. But I wanted to create spaces that I could be present, because it's very difficult to be present, especially with phones today and the demands we have in life and society, and just there's a lot. And we very rarely get to be present. So I started creating spaces around every corner that would captivate you, even if it was for a moment, even if it's just a reflection ball that suddenly you see your reflection, because the moment you see your reflection, no matter what's going on in your head, even though you don't even realize it, you suddenly become present looking at your reflection. You might go back to your busy world 3 seconds later, but for those 3 seconds you were present. And it just started every corner. We started creating different spaces for people to enjoy, whether it was a wishing tree, a gratitude tree, a giving tree, a labyrinth, the barbed wire trail, angel wings, flowers. And as volunteers started joining us and helping, they all had skills. They had the most beautiful skills. So somebody would say, well, I want to take this on. Or I would say, I really want to build a labyrinth. Does anybody want to help? And then all the people that resonates with showed up. And if I'm not good at something, it's okay, because there's somebody who is good at that. So all of our volunteers have different things to offer, different beautiful qualities that maybe one wants to help clean the animal areas and another doesn't want to get any dirt on their hands. So there's so many different spaces.
Yeah. And it continues to grow and evolve, right? You're pretty much sold out every weekend with events that are going on at the Giving Place.
Yes.
What's next as it continues to grow and evolve, or do you just let it unfold as it should? You kind of have a good mix of like vision for the future, but then as well, like natural intuition and like letting it present itself.
Thank you. I guess my ideal end result is I would like to build a building, not a large building, but a building that we can continue to do workshops, help people, have our little store in there with our products that are made from the land, and a little cafe that isn't affected by rain and snow. So that's kind of and all run naturally with solar power or green or
sustainable, self-sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the end goal, is to be able to have the Giving Garden be able to grow year round and be able to teach others how they can grow themselves and help contribute there if that's at the Giving Place or the Giving Garden Haven, if that's what they want. And just continue to create an escape like that. In the end, there's nothing that gives me more fuel, more joy than watching somebody smile and come up with tears in their eyes saying, I just love being here. This is so beautiful. Thank you. And it just gives me joy.
Love it. Yeah, it's, a lot has happened quickly, but it feels like you're still early in the story. I'm excited to watch it to continue and grow in yourself. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
I thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.